Here we go.
This meeting is being recorded.
Oh, that was cool. All right, welcome to Witchpolice Radio. I'm here with someone who was on the podcast before, but it's been a while. I think the last time you were on was a couple of years ago. And obviously, you have new music out. Things have changed everywhere in the world, especially with creative people over the past 2.5 years with just what everyone's been through. But I think we should maybe just do a bit of catch up on sort of what you've been up to musically sort of since the last time you were on the show. But before we even get into any of that, if you want to introduce yourself and just give a bit of background about what it is you do as an artist, that would be a good place to start.
Yo, what's up? Mooki from Winnipeg, Manitoba. I make music, I songwrite. I'm a b-boy, so I've been breakdancing for 14, almost 15 years now. I'm just another person that loves art in the city, and I'm just trying to be part of the art scene that's happening here. So yeah.
Cool. I think that's kind of a good way to describe it too. I think that sort of describes a lot of people covering all different genres and all different sort of artistic disciplines too. It's just someone who likes art in the city, because I feel like so many of the different communities are intertwined. Like you said, I mean, you have the music side and you have the dance side. There's all these different things that are enmeshed with each other, especially in a relatively small place like Winnipeg, where everyone sort of encounters each other within the overall creative world.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of amazing because you don't realize it until you kind of go out and then you see these different communities, and then you realize like, well, I have a friend who's in that section of people, or I have somebody who's doing something in that community. So it's really interesting, and everybody kind of fosters everybody too. So it's really cool.
Yeah, it's good to see for sure. So last time you were on the show, you had I can't remember if you had just put out your tape or you were sort of in the process of putting out the Mooki tape, and that obviously, that was sort of your first main effort as an artist as far as music goes. So what has it been like sort of since then? Because I remember when you released it, I saw quite a lot of positive response from people online. Over the course of doing my show, I've had other artists mention that tape and as something that they really dug and they got into, and sort of was something locally that they were a fan of. So what's it been like for you sort of in the period since putting yourself out there like that?
Very, very, very interesting. Like a lot of positive responses, as you said, like a lot of people who kind of like supported the fact that I was trying something different, trying to represent myself in a way that felt genuine to me. And I've had a lot of reinforcement to kind of like just double down on creating music that I want to hear. You know what I mean? So very blessed. That project was very special. It was the first time that we'd ever tried to make music. Me and Steve sat in the studio for like 10 days and just tapped in and made a beautiful project. It's everywhere. You can still get cassette tapes if anybody wants any. So like very grateful for that. And I think that was a really cool introduction for people to see kind of like who I was, because from that point on, I kind of like paced myself and really just got to learn a lot from people,
So for people who haven't heard your newer stuff, I know you just recently on Christmas released this new music, but people who maybe are only familiar with the Mooki tape, how have you changed artistically? I mean, do you think that there's a significant difference in your sound sort of from that tape to now that you notice when listening back to your own stuff?
Absolutely. Right after Mookie tape happened, I think it was like a few months later, kind of around this time too, I dropped a kind of like an EP on SoundCloud called Module Lee.
Right.
I feel like Module Lee was the first time I kind of got to show people that like I really like to sing and melodize. And I think that was something I got to explore on my own, because for the first time, I'd finally learned also how to like record myself. So I built up my first home studio, and I was recording myself and figuring out how to use Logic and just trying to understand like what I liked about my voice and like what I could use here, and just how to like get those ideas out of my brain into songs. And I feel like that was the first time I got to do that. But then shortly after then, we got to put out Black Sheep, and Black Sheep for me was like my first like real baby. It was like we took a lot of time. We had the blueprints. It was more than just writing the songs. It was like we write the songs, we rewrite the songs, pick which one we like out of the two versions, take little things from here and there. Really important with like the mixing, the ideas that we're presenting, so that way it all feels like the same idea, things like that. Just like learning things like that. It's been really cool. So I feel like those are definitely ways that I've like improved, or like how my sound is evolved and changed over time.
Do you think that I would imagine that you've also kind of developed your confidence too, just after having this experience of not only performing, but recording yourself and sort of, like you just said, finding the way to sort of hone the sound you want and find, the version that you want to put out there and stuff. I imagine that's got
For
to be a
sure.
big role.
For sure. Like there's a level of it where almost, man, like there's so many talented people in this city. There's a little bit of imposter syndrome, I feel like, no matter what.
Yeah,
But at the
everyone
same
gets that. Yeah.
it's kind of crazy, but yeah, I feel good. Like I feel like I can make a song that I would like, me personally. So that's really important for me.
Well, I think that's a good thing to strive for too. Is rather than trying to sound like something or put on some kind of a vibe, like having just this is what you want to hear, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's kind of the way you're going to get the most sort of authentic version of yourself if you're going for that goal.
Yeah. And it's freeing. Like I don't know, it's like something I get to have, you know? Like once it's out, it's not mine anymore. But when I'm making it and when I'm like singing it in my studio and retaking the takes, it always sounds a certain way. Like that's for me, you know? So it's
Yeah.
cool. It's cool.
Yeah. So this album that came out when we're recording is just a few days ago, I guess. Really, what can you tell me about that release? Because that's I listened to it. I was listening to it quite a bit today, and just to kind of prepare for this interview. And I mean, I have a lot of questions about it, but I'm hoping you give me some background on sort of how this came
Okay.
about and who you worked with.
For sure. This is a project that's it's a producer project. So this is a project by Ali Wan Kenobi, and I'm like the creative director of how like the features were arranged and where I would sit on it and just how like certain samples were used for like the overall concept. A lot of it was just a really big representation of the last days that we had in Fourth Quarter Studios. Uh, Unfortunately, during the COVID times, a lot of things changed, and one of those things was gentrification hit us, and we lost our studio.
Oh, it
So,
sucks.
yeah, it is what it is. You know, onto better things. But the last days that we had that studio, we really had to like be like, oh, we want to make sure we have something to take away. So a lot of these songs were a part of what we did on those last days, like the mastering on them, and just like recording them even. So it's a lot of that. It like we really wanted to just like me and Ali. I feel like Ali has always had a very unique and very like distinct sound, but also like uh like I feel like, for example, this tape for me feels like the most like succinct contribution to the whole culture of hip hop that we've ever got to be a part of. You know what I
Well,
mean by that?
uh, well, I'm hoping you can elaborate on that because that's an interesting thing to say about it. Like, I think I know what you mean, but maybe if you want to explain it, let's see if I'm
Yeah,
right.
definitely. Like I feel like it's like the first time where it was like uh I don't know. I don't want to say that we were aiming to like represent something that was like something that we respected.
Okay.
More so now we're respecting ourselves and we're saying we are this culture. So how we sound is how the culture will sound. So
Okay.
however
Okay.
this shit turns out, we're gonna make it like that, and that's our voice in this thing that's bigger than us.
Within the larger umbrella that is hip hop and then music and yeah, for sure, for sure.
Exactly.
So you mentioned earlier that you were kind of involved in the concept behind the project. What is the concept? Because it definitely has like definitely a consistent, cohesive feel to it, like from track to track.
Hmm.
I mean,
Hmm.
it seems like there's an overall idea behind it, a lot more than a lot of records that come out now, where every song is clearly something specific and individual. This seems more like a unified piece, I guess, if that makes sense.
I think the best way to say it is like it's us attempting to kind of like talk about the same topic on every song in different ways or different avenues that it affects us. So like Addict is kind of like uh how our upbringings have changed us mentally to how we're like how we do certain things that remind us of our families and things like
Okay.
that. And also just like why do we act like that? Maybe it's because there's a sort of disconnection from our past. So like there's things of like there's moments where I'm finally screaming on the project and I start talking about like certain things that I've learned about like the Arawak and Taino people of the Caribbean. So just trying to talk about things that are important to us as opposed to just like kind of talking about like a lot of love situations or like uh if you kind of understand what I'm saying when I
I
say
do,
that.
yeah. Yeah, going specifically personal rather than just a personal take on like a universal experience, right?
Yeah, that would be a good way of describing exactly what I said. Yeah.
And so one of the things that I noticed in listening to it, and I don't know if this was deliberate or not, but it's one of the things I like about the project is that it seems like not on every song, but on certain songs, it almost seems like when the beat is more hectic and when it's kind of more, there's more happening, it's more chaotic, it almost seems like you're rapping slower, and then on the parts where the beats are more sparse and more minimalist, you're rapping faster. And it kind of, I really like that kind of combination, that you're definitely playing off each other in the sense of, like, you know, the way that they mesh together. It seems like it seems deliberate, but I'm not sure if it is.
Like there's a level of it where I'm just trying to like redefine what people say is acceptable.
Okay.
So like you hear a fast beat and you think like somebody should approach this with a quick flow or like
snap. You expect that, yeah.
You know, and I'll try to just like kind of break it down. And then also like with a lot of songs, I'll do like really weird things. Like I'll just like close my eyes and listen to it over and over again, and I'll just kind of go with where my head takes me. Maybe it's just the way that I listen to music and the things that I like that makes me operate like that. But interesting observation. That's like, yeah, that's really intuitive to see that, for sure.
Yeah, it was the first thing that grabbed me about it, actually, is just the dichotomy of the fast beat and slow rapping, and then vice versa. And then the other thing that I noticed too is, you know, all the songs are, with a couple exceptions, but they're all fairly short. I mean, there's some that are less than 2 minutes. A lot of them are right around the 2 minute mark. And also, you know, I was listening on Bandcamp. You have the lyrics there. A lot of them are short lyrically too. There's just kind of you know, a few paragraphs of lyrics, and the way that they're written out too is almost more like it's almost more just like a, what's the word for it? Like prose rather than I mean, it rhymes, but the way that it's written out is like a paragraph rather than just like, you know, line. Is that something that you did deliberately as well, or is that just sort of how you work?
Definitely, like well, I'd say it's a little bit of both. Because mentally, I also like when I'm writing my lyrics, I like to look at it a certain way where it makes sense of what I was talking about. But then there's also a level of it where even in the songs, I'm saying letters and symbols and numbers. Like I'm kind of using them to express things like the world is burning, everything's fucking ending, but I'm trying to talk about like baby shake that, you know, like the way you shake that makes me scream. But then even on that level, it's also kind of like going back into like certain rituals where you dance to perform it. It's like my idea is just basically like with less words saying the same things, but also making it so it's like the reader can take it so many different ways. They can take it literally, they can look into it and try to see where I was thinking about it. And
yeah.
Well,
that goes back to what you said, you know, right at the beginning about how, you know, once it's released, it's not yours anymore, right?
Yeah. That's something that I've like struggled with, because I like the feeling of having all this stuff, but then like I don't know what's gonna happen when it's out there, and there's a little bit of fear of like, are people gonna legitimize it? But then there's also like, just get it out there, bro. Like this is like this is a part of me, you know.
Yeah,
I have to express this.
Well, what, I guess, like, to you personally, what would legitimize it? Like, I mean, what makes it so? What kind of reaction do you want from this? Like, who, I guess, like, are there certain people you kind of hope will check it out and like it, and is that what kind of gives it that legitimacy, or is it, what's kind of the most positive result you could get? You know,
like, yeah, that's a good question. I really think that that's so like, it's like, man, for me to like admit that, it'd be like almost like defeating myself type shit. Like, but like, I know, I feel like mentally as a human being, getting a lot of people to like your stuff is always gonna make you feel good.
Of course,
and
yeah.
With that being said, though, for me, I'm trying my best to learn to like not care about what happens once it's out of my hands. I think the most important thing for me is just showing it to as many people as possible, and showing people that like I really believe in what we did with that project, and not just like, you know what I mean? Like we're not just putting this music out just to put music out so we were active or something like that. Like we care about these songs. These songs are songs we play when we're going through certain emotions, and that people can play when they're going through certain emotions too.
So how do you, and maybe this is something you're still figuring out because you just released it, but how do you do that? Because everyone and their dog is putting out music online like every 10 seconds, right? And there's so much stuff out there. And a lot of it, like you said, is just putting out music to put out music, right? So how do you kind of get it across that this is something that's maybe a little deeper and maybe a little more personal and more sort of worth a close listen than everything else that's just flooding, you know, everyone's computer?
I think the way that I try to look at it is just like the right people will find it. The people who are looking for that should, or hopefully they'll find it if I'm doing my job. And my job is just to make sure that it's available for people. But then you also run into things like me personally. I'm hearing a lot of the conversations about streaming and trying to understand where I fit in. as a Black man in hip hop and how I operate with how I distribute my music. So sometimes I'm trying to do things that are a little bit left field, like putting something only on Bandcamp and having something only available the full listen on other streaming platforms. But again, I'm just hoping that the people who really care about the shit, the people who really want to hear something like that will look out for me, because I'll be there, you know. I'm willing to fucking slang my tapes in the fucking parking lot if you need me to be there, you know.
Yeah. Well, that's a good attitude to have too. I think that that's like, as much as it sounds ridiculous, I think that's actually kind of rare in the sense that people are happy to just put it online and then just leave it and then go on to the next thing. But I think, yeah, when you have someone who actually is willing to take a tape to the parking lot, yeah.
This is life. Like, we literally breathed life onto a track. Take it however you want to take it, but take that shit, you know.
Yeah. Okay, well then, maybe a good segue here then is where can people find this? How does someone hear this tape,
Right,
and
so,
your old stuff too?
Absolutely. Well, most of my stuff is on streaming platforms. Mooki Tape, Black Sheep, those two projects are on streaming platforms. We have a single, Jamaican Honey, which the music video is out for it. We also have music videos for some of the songs from Module Firefly and Black Sheep. We have Just Like Me on YouTube. As far as City Hunter, it's available for purchase, so you can have the MP3s on Bandcamp. I don't believe that we're going to be releasing it to stream platforms probably ever. Okay. But if you want to listen to it for free, you can also listen to it on SoundCloud. It's the full project, and on YouTube, it's the full project.
Is this one going to come out as a physical tape as well, or is it just strictly digital?
That's the plan. That's the plan.
Cool.
Obviously, man, I'm sorry, like, money is an issue, but as soon as we can figure out how to get them vinyls proper, that's the plan. Vinyls and cassette tapes are really the plans.
Yeah. Well, and I think that, like, what you just said about money being that, everyone's dealing with that. I mean, everyone in the world is dealing with that right now, but I mean, that's always been kind of one of the in this streaming area we're in, that's been one of the biggest hurdles for a lot of artists, is just especially vinyl, right? The cost is so prohibitive that it would be amazing if everyone could do it, but there's these like massive backlogs to even get stuff pressed in the first place, and then you got to pay like some crazy amount of money. So yeah, it's
even like the level of just like thinking about like the other artists that you're competing with, like, or
totally.
not even competing with, just in the same community with, like, theirs cost way less than yours because they have a little bit more like wiggle room. They've done it before, or they have certain agreements. So then when you go to put out yours and you end up selling yours for more expensive than Kendrick Lamar, you're like, oh shit. But at the same time, like, it is what it is. Like, we're just doing whatever we can to get the out to people. So
yeah, and the right people are going to support it, right?
Right. Exactly.
So overall, I mean, that's a Bandcamp. You can get it online. As far as finding out what you're up to, you know, in terms of new music coming out in the future or potential shows, things like that, what's the best way to follow you and find out about it?
Best way to find me for sure is gonna be on Instagram. Mooki with no E, MOOKIWITNOE. It's Mooki with no E, not Mooki with no. So check me out there. That's really where I post most of my stuff. I don't have a Twitter, so I'll post it there. Also, I believe I am also I believe I'm a member of Manitoba Music still. So if you subscribe to them and you can find my platform through them, that's also an availability. Yeah.
Cool. Awesome.